Hey, what's up guys, this is Atrix here. Today we'll be doing a gameplay comparison of Pokemon Sword on both Yuzu and Skyline Emulator. Before starting the test, let me show you guys the settings which I'll be using in the latest early access build of Yuzu Emulator Android. In general, limit speed percentage has been turned off, CPU accuracy is set to accurate. In graphics, accuracy level is normal, resolution scaling will be setting it to 1x because I'm really tired of emulating games at 0.5x resolution. We want to see the full potential of Yuzu Android. Disk shader cache has been enabled, force maximum clocks has also been enabled along with asynchronous shaders. Let's go back, audio output engine is set to auto. In debug, we have fast memory enabled, CPU debugging has also been turned on. So these are the settings which will be used for Pokemon Sword. Let's open Pokemon Sword on the Yuzu Android early access build and see how well does it actually work. By the way, Nintendo Switch emulation test on ROG Ally coming very soon. Just take a look at this guys, my OnePlus 11 is almost half the size of ROG Ally's length, so that's pretty crazy perspective. But anyways, our game has begun and it is giving us 60 FPS at the title screen, and as I mentioned previously, I am not using any kind of custom GPU drivers, and after waiting for a few seconds at the top left corner we are getting around 60 FPS. So let's leave our house and find out how much FPS do we get in the outside world. As soon as we leave the house, we are still getting over 20 FPS, which is bad, which is really bad to be honest, but it is indeed an improvement in terms of performance of Yuzu Android. Previously, I used to get around 5 to 10 FPS in outside world as soon as I exit the house. There are very less graphical issues, like I haven't even seen a single graphical glitch, whereas previously this part used to be glitched. So there is indeed some improvements in terms of Yuzu Emulator Android builds. There we go, our game has started, and don't forget that we are emulating it at 1x native resolution. So if we downscale the resolution all the way to 0.5x, the FPS will be even greater. But we will be comparing the performance with Skyline Emulator, and graphics wise I definitely have to say Yuzu Emulator looks way better than Skyline. In Skyline, even if you enable dock mode, the textures will look jittery and not full resolution, whereas the 720p resolution set on the Yuzu Emulator Android is still looking far better, and even all the lightings, shadows, etc. are looking better than Skyline Emulator. I can say that for sure. So let's enter Hop's house. I'd like to tell you guys that my device has Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor, and considering the fact that it is the most powerful Android device, one of the most powerful, still these FPS aren't considered to be playable. Just imagine if someone has Snapdragon 720 processor, he definitely won't be able to emulate Pokemon Sword on Yuzu, whereas in Skyline it does work. And even inside house we are getting only about 16 FPS. Now as I was saying, if we just stop our character after the shaders are loaded, you will definitely see jump in FPS. We are all the way up to 32, which is 2 times the amount of FPS. Now let's try meeting Leon and see how well does Yuzu Android handle all the special effects thrown in our way. The worst thing about Yuzu Android is the fact that low-end device users cannot really enjoy it at all, like not at all, because none of these games will even boot on their devices. The graphic quality is 100%. I have nothing to complain in terms of graphical glitches. So Yuzu team has indeed fixed a lot of graphical issues which we were previously facing in the earlier builds of Yuzu Emulator. Now let's try running the same game on Skyline Emulator with the same save file and find out how well does it actually work. Let me show you guys the settings which I am using on the Skyline Edge version 69, the last official build of Skyline Emulator. Dock mode has been enabled, show performance statistics also enabled, GPU driver configuration I have used default system drivers in both Yuzu and Skyline, force triple buffering has been enabled, disable frame throttling has also been enabled. This will make sure that our game exceeds over 30 FPS. Executor slot count scale set to 6, executor flush threshold set to 62, direct memory import has been enabled, force maximum clocks has also been enabled, free guest texture memory is also enabled, shader cache has been enabled, fast GPU readback and writes have been enabled as well. So these are the settings which I will be using for Skyline Emulator. And immediately you can see there are some graphical glitches even in this cutscene, whereas on Yuzu Android the cutscene was being rendered properly, there was no blurry issues. There we go, the same save file, and immediately you will notice that the game is being emulated in 1080p resolution, I guess. Let me zoom in. Yeah, the game is definitely being emulated in 1080p resolution, even though we are still getting the same amount of FPS that we used to get. Well, not anymore. We were getting 38 FPS, which we also got in Yuzu Android, but now, oh my god, what is this, bro? 80-90 FPS is just too fast, guys. I don't know what happened. Maybe some shaders got compiled in background or something like that, but the game is super fast now. Just take a look at this, guys. Before we were getting normal FPS, but now we have gone Super Saiyan. Anyways, let's exit the house and see the beginning cutscene and how well is it rendered. You can definitely notice that the eye isn't being rendered properly and there are some shadow flickering issues. Alright, not bad, but at least the game is giving us playable frame rate, right? In this exact moment we were getting about 25 FPS on the Yuzu emulator Android, and there are some minimal stutters while emulating this game on Skyline. Well, if you ask me which emulator is the best for emulating Pokemon Sword, then I would go with Skyline, because in Skyline at least the game is playable. Well, playable is considered to be 30 FPS. This is more than playable, whereas Yuzu is just enough, but the graphic quality is not as great as Yuzu. Like, the colors feel little washed out. Even if you try playing Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu on Skyline, the colors are indeed washed out, and you will notice at the top left side of the screen I am getting around 20 to 21 FPS, which is the same amount of FPS I was getting on Yuzu Android. I don't know how to feel about this, but the game actually feels little more smoother than the FPS bar which we are seeing. The colors, saturations, the graphical issues, like they are very minimal, but if you switch from Yuzu to Skyline, you will definitely notice them instantaneously. But let's try meeting Leon and see if there are any problems when rendering this cutscene, because everyone would like to play the story mode of this game, whereas all my previous tests were made using save file. You can notice we are only getting about 20 FPS. This is the truth about Nintendo Switch emulation on Android. No matter how many settings you change, you cannot escape your fate. And if we zoom into Hops and our main character's eyes, you will notice that they don't have anything inside them. Like, these are eyes of a devil. But anyways, let's skip this cutscene, and the FPS has gone up. Alright, after waiting for few seconds. This is something strange that happens with Skyline Emulator Android. By the way, if I do use Mesa Turnip Adreno driver, then I do get more FPS. That's why here I am getting low FPS, but in my other test I was using custom GPU drivers. It jumped from 20 FPS to directly 50, which is really impressive and strange at the same time. Well, let me know in the comment section down below which emulator do you guys use. See you next time, and yeah, the FPS dropped again to 17. That's going to be it for today's video. Goodbye.